Okay, I'd like to call the Wisconsin Rapids Water Works and Lighting Commission monthly meeting to order. First on the agenda is the approval, additions, or corrections to the minutes of the following meeting, and that would be the regular commission meeting held on September 12th.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of September 12th as written.
Okay, John approved, Rick second. Any corrections? If not, all in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I believe that's it. Now we can go to action items. 3.1 Industrial Park Riser Pole.
Yeah, if you'd like, Tom, I can kind of talk about that project a little bit.
Okay.
So back at the end of February, we had an arrestor on that pole fail, and because of the poor design of that pole, there's two circuits on it. So when the arrestor failed on the lower circuit, the gas and the arc that developed actually went into the circuit above it as well. So it actually tripped out two different circuits. It caused an outage to roughly 1,300 customers, and we had to reroute power for the customers to restore their power, and then it took us hours to repair the pole. Because it happened in February, it didn't make the 2018 budget. After that happened, I was planning on doing it in 2019, but we have an opportunity here where we've got one of the crews on the line crew could do this now in the next couple weeks before the frost gets in the ground. So it would all be done with in-house labor. All the material we need is in the storeroom. So to me, it's just a no-brainer to go ahead and make this happen. And I know the price tag sounds a lot of money, but in my mind, you're just basically diverting funds that would have got charged to other things to do this capital project. That is will be very, it'll be a big improvement in that substation. And so that's why I'm bringing it to your attention to go ahead and do
this. And this is, it looks like it's 1,500 feet underground.
Yeah, so you're roughly 5 pole spans of overhead wire. And again, because of the poor design when it was put in back in 1989, these 2 feeders out of this substation, they basically crisscross. So you have a small portion of underground wire that leaves the substation switchgear, goes up a riser pole and heads north, and then you've got another feeder that has a small portion of underground that hits a riser pole and heads south. And so you're, besides the confusing nature of, why is this doing this, you've got that problem where you got double circuits on, 2 to 3 spans of the poles. And we've been trying our best to eliminate the double circuit design to begin with. It's a safety concern when you're up working in the bucket and you've got, 3 phases that are energized either right below you or right above you as you're working on the other circuit. It's something that we want to eliminate, and we still have that in quite a few places in the city, but we have eliminated quite a lot of it as well. So again, this is another big opportunity to get rid of some of that.
Are you doing this because you feel that you can have excess labor from now till the end?
They would be, other than this, probably doing tree trimming if they weren't doing this capital project.
So is the rest of the budget online?
The rest of the budget is right on track, but if
Coming back and asking you.
yeah, but if we're gonna do this project, we're asking for this money because we don't want the budget to be over budget this year.
Okay.
Yep.
And when you said gas, was that caused by a transformer?
So when you have something fault, you usually have an arc develop between the phases, and you have the amount of energy that's there. It's so hot that it actually vaporizes equipment, and that's the gas that happens when something fails.
Okay.
Yep.
And this can be done with our own labor between now and frost time.
Correct.
And this material that's in inventory is
Yeah, so it's
available
mostly
for emergencies presently?
Yeah, so we always keep a certain amount of cable on hand, so we wouldn't need to replace the cable. It would just be at the end of the year, we'd have less inventory of that type of underground cable.
As far as, if we have this in inventory and it's 140,000, does that money come out when we use it? When you buy, let's say, available emergency equipment, does that go into storage and it's not really expensed until it comes out of storage?
Correct. We've got an inventory account on our books right now. I believe for electric, it's probably right around $1.2 million or $1.3 million of physical inventory that's there. And then once we use it, that's when it
So
gets capitalized.
that's where a lot of that money, I think it is going to come. I don't know how much the labor would be, but it would probably be.
So we estimate about 40,000 in material, and the rest of it is labor and the cost of the equipment.
And there's not a contingency piece or anything that this could come from the current budget?
Correct. We already looked at that, and we're right on budget, but we're right tight on budget, so we don't, if we were to say, let's try to do this project, we would probably be over by a certain amount.
I would move for approval of $140,000 for the replacement of the industrial park riser pole with underground wire and circuitry.
Okay, John made the motion.
I'll second the motion.
John Harper seconded the motion. Is there any other questions or discussion?
The only discussion I would make is we're cash flow negative at the point, or at this point, so.
Not for the year, are we?
We are after September, we are.
So it's gonna have to come,
And you're still making the motion, huh?
I am, with some reluctance.
Okay, motion seconded, and no other questions or discussion. All in agreement, please say aye. Aye. Are there any nays? Okay, thanks. Department update, safety committee?
Sean is in here, but I was wondering what kind of respirators are used by the crews? It's monthly respirator checks, but I'm curious what type of respirators.
Air monitors at the wells for chlorine, I'm assuming.
Okay.
right?
One for chlorine, and then we have other monitors for oxygen, other gases, whatever, when they go into a confined area.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, line superintendent's report.
The 5 bad switches, that seems unusual.
It can be, but it's not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we're getting, a lot of the equipment's getting to that age,
Okay.
50s, 60s installs.
And you're not seeing more recent or newer equipment failures?
No, we're switched to a polymer, those are all porcelain, and over time, freezing and thawing cycles just crack them and they fail. They show up when it's wet like this is generally when you find them.
The one of them, high voltage complaint. What type of voltage would they be experiencing? How high is high?
So we need to maintain per PSC between 114 to 126 volts at a house.
Okay.
So if a customer is maybe seeing their lights actually get brighter,
Yeah.
they'll call and they'll say, we're seeing this, and that gets logged in as a high voltage complaint. So a lot of times what is the cause of that is a loose neutral at the house connection.
Okay.
So our trouble truck will roll out there and try to check that out. If we can't find anything and the problem consistently keeps happening to the customer, our next level is to put a recorder at the house itself, and we'll record for 1 day to a week, and then we'll get that back and we'll actually see if we're staying in that 114 to 126 volt range. Since we redid all the regulators at all the substations, a lot of those complaints have gone away. But like when I started 10 years ago, low voltage and high voltage complaints we had quite a few of those. Yeah,
So it has to be above the 126 to be an official high voltage?
to be an official.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Do we track those?
I have a file, it's a paper file in my office, so when we do a recording for a customer, we print it out, and then I keep it on file. So,
How many of the times roughly that you get those complaints is it actual? You know what I mean? Outside of range?
Way less than half, and
Yeah, okay.
90% of them is customer equipment. That's
Okay.
bad.
yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, the water department operations report?
Dale, we've had enough water.
And we can turn it off anytime.
One more lead gone?
Yeah, a couple.
So what's your count now?
I have to check with Adam and see, we played probably 10 so far this year, alone without construction, but took care of some more of them, so I have to check with Adam to get an official count of exactly where we are, but we're knocking the number down pretty good.
It seems like we've been chipping away for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Anything else? If not, the customer service, or customer support supervisor report.
I'm surprised by your graphic, that over, half of the website visits were new visits. You know, I usually think of people, coming back and
Right.
rechecking or whatever, but to see over half was new, I don't, if that came from a mailer or something that was in the mailer, or, I'm not sure.
Then what's the reason for the uptick in the receivables?
You mean for the 60-day?
Well, we actually have it for 30, 60, both.
Well, I believe that is due to the customers' bills that were so high this summer because of the heat. That's because we're still disconnecting but a lot of the bills, they were really high this summer. I mean, there's some customers that had $300 and $400 monthly bills, so when they get behind,
So they get onto a payment plan.
right, and we stretch that out to 4 months, so it takes them a while to get caught up.
This is the first year in the last 5 or 6, we've had any significant heat, so customers weren't prepared for the high bills that can sometimes happen in our climate, so, but it's been pretty mild up until this year.
Well, the receivables, as far as current goes, for last month are up about $350,000.
But too, I mean, one thing to remember too, when you're looking at September receivables and you're 30 days back, that was stuff that was billed in August for July usage, and that's where Lynn was talking that July was very hot, so compared to last year, it's probably closer to what it was in like 2015, just bill-wise.
And then what, for the trip and state, it's great to see those recoveries. How does that compare to what we've approved for write-offs so far this year?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look at that and get back to you.
Thank
We've
you.
only done write-offs once this year so far, right?
We have, I believe,
This could be over multiple years too, John, is what you,
Yeah, I understand. I just,
I don't know what it was. I think it was like 80 to 90,000.
I believe we're pretty close to flat right now in our uncollectible account in electric. I can get you that number, but I think we're really close to zero. That is netting it out to what we expense this year.
yeah, I would say. It's getting pretty close. All right. And on the report on dollars disconnected, there's no report of dollars called. Is there some reason for not including that?
I guess where are you looking there?
I am looking, that must be like page 3 of the report.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. So you're looking at the,
924 through 928 period.
let me check on that. I don't know why that wasn't included in there. I didn't catch that.
Those would be the calls that are made the week before. So if you look at like the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, those are the disconnects we're doing on the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th. So we're always calling a week ahead of the actual disconnect.
Okay.
So, and then, one thing you can really notice is when you look at it, we called 96 people on the 17th for $21,000 of balances, and we ended up disconnecting 14 of them for 3,600 balances. So those final calls really do make a big difference, and that's what people kind of realize is when they need to actually make that payment.
Any other questions? Okay, Director of Finance report.
We didn't have that much with Morgan Stanley to begin with, correct?
It's a very low amount. We pretty much went away from them about a year ago when we switched to Ellers. So I think at this point, we're probably the one CD we have there matures early in 2019. So my recommendation will probably be we just kind of let that mature and then close out the account and move on. So Ellers has been doing a really good job for us.
I have a question about the 105,000 for, I take it it's the land that we're selling?
That's where we did some preliminary studies for putting that well 6. So those costs kind of got put into an asset account until that either actually happens or you decide you're not going to do it anymore. And since we sold that land, as part of the rate case, we went through everything that was in that account and realized that project is never going to happen. So at this point, we expense those costs.
And I guess I don't understand, when were those costs incurred? Just recently?
No, those would have been like prior to 2010.
And so then you had it in an asset account or whatever.
Right.
Now, since it's going away,
We're
it's...
expensing it in, writing off that asset.
Yeah. Okay, I was just wondering if we spent $105,000
Just, no, not to sell the land.
to test land in a forest.
Nope.
A while ago.
Yeah.
All right.
I have another question related to that as well. Why do we charge half and half, and particularly half, to water treatment expense?
So everything that was in the notes that I had back from 2011 showed that all the costs were related to well 6. Once we drilled into it a little more, some of the costs were from well 6, some of the costs were from the pilot study up in the filter plant and different processes at that point prior to 2010. So in analyzing that data, coming up with what the numbers actually were and what the projects were, that's why it was split between water treatment and
That's one of the reasons that project became so cost prohibitive is because the water was so bad, we were going to have to put another treatment facility, what they call a pre-treatment facility on the site. So some of that groundwork was done early on before we decided to can the project.
which would have been well treatment, it would have been treatment as opposed to well.
Okay. Because from the description, that wasn't necessarily what I understood.
Okay, sorry about that.
And this next item, where we're talking about the water rate cases being delayed, what do we see that as a level of impact on the budget?
It impacted it a little bit in our preliminary numbers we've got put together now. We anticipated like a March implementation. Now we're looking at probably a May implementation. We'll talk about it in the budget meeting, but it's substantial. I mean, the rate of return definitely is impacted. Probably 0.5 to 0.75% based on that difference.
So the next couple pages show this negative cash flow. So do we see that coming to a balance by the end of the year?
I'm hopeful that it comes back. Looking at past years, September is always one of those shoulder months when you've got high power bills, but then you've got lower revenue coming in. So it's usually either September or October when this hits. This year it's September, so I'm anticipating it's coming back by the end of the year. We do have a little bit of leeway with what we transfer into depreciation funds, electric and water. So I mean, we've got a little ways to, if it gets away from us. We didn't put a lot in this last couple months, but that's something we always can change if we need to.
We talked earlier this year about the potential need for an electric rate case next year. So I mean, once we get the water one wrapped up, then we'll probably start talking about electric one. It's been a long time since we've had a full blown.
2014 was the last one.
So there's definitely a need there.
When I was looking at the electric income statement, and one little thing that kind of popped out, the public street and highway lighting, it seems like it's trending down every year as far as the cost goes. Is that because we're putting more LED lights in?
It is.
Do you know about, you're not very far in that project, are you?
Oh, I'd say we're almost 50%.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep. It's been a budget item in the capital
Yeah.
budget for probably 5 years now. And so I would say, if you come up to my office, I got that board outside.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I would say we're maybe a little shy of 50%, but we're getting closer.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. So it kind of does look like it's making a difference if they're trending down. Anybody have, are there any other questions?
The only other one was, when I look at the water, for multifamily, looks like it's going to be quite a bit below budget. Is there some reason for that?
There is. We found out when we were going through the rate case that some of our multifamily residentials were put in the wrong rate at the time when they created this multifamily residential rate. They were being used the residential water rate as opposed to the non-residential rate, which is one of the things we're looking to get cleared up in the water rate case, but that's why that number is lower, because we had to go back and true it up this year, and then previous to that we was a non-operating expense or non-operating revenue to credit that difference.
Are these areas put in by the PSC that you have to Are these generated by a county?
The rate structure?
The rate structure, like
Is set by the Public Service
single-family,
Commission.
multifamily.
Yep, they define that multifamily residential as any property that has 3 or more units.
Okay. And that's a different category, maybe not necessarily a different rate, but.
It's a different category and it can be a different rate. What's really eye-opening in this water rate case compared to the electric one we did in 2014 is the flexibility of the Public Service Commission to allow the community to design their rates as they see fit. Some utilities just have one cost for water. It's, $3 per unit, and it doesn't matter if it's industrial or if it's residential or sprinkling or who's using it, it's the same rate. Some of them have inclining blocks, so the more water you use, the more costly that next unit is. Trying to aim at conservation, where we have a declining block usage for industrial and commercial users to kind of lower that cost for our bigger users. So it's really across the board, but as far as the categories, they define those categories, but the rates are up to each community.
Thanks.
I was going to ask the same question about the industrial sales of water. Is that due to Verso's using less?
That is, and we've been watching that for probably the last year very closely and just making sure we're on top of their usage so we can trend better and have better forecasts going forward. But they're our primary industrial user. And they do have lower water usage.
And we're sure that it's not because we're not getting paid for something we're sending up.
We've done several visits there and checked things out and talked to several different people over there. And we're pretty confident that things are flowing like they're supposed to be, so.
Okay.
All right, Information Systems Administrator?
Can you give an example of some of the policies or procedures you're talking about in terms of the security, in terms of?
Mainly what it's going to do is it's going to define stuff like password policies and then incident reporting will also be in there, different things like that.
Okay.
It's all stuff we're doing now. We just don't necessarily have the documentation or know what what NERC and FERC are looking for when they do their auditing.
Yeah.
And this will just bring us, closer to compliance with those types of organizations so that when if they ever do come audit, we're ready.
Yeah, is there anything else? Not? Conservation Manager report?
Sean, with the solar systems, are any of those, I don't know what the term is, but positive or net positive or whatever, that we're actually purchasing some of the energy back, or?
With these, there's probably 2 in the system we purchased back.
Okay.
And so actually, any of these newer installs, like the ones I'm mentioning in here, we won't be most likely purchasing any back. I mean, there's a couple situations where they're using it perfectly, meaning it's a single individual, very small home, and at certain time periods, due to time of day scheduling, we have to buy back a very small amount of power.
But over the month, they're still the ones paying us.
Right, yeah. So, let's put aside, say, the library and, Lincoln High School, they use all their power. There's maybe 2 that we purchase a small amount from.
And that's at the 6 cents, right?
So the library and the high school uses all the power that they,
The library will put back some on Sundays when they're not there. The heating, cooling systems, lighting's not on. And then the high school, of course, they benefit from it. Just, we don't buy back from them. They use it all, but there's quite a benefit there to them. Because it's a 96 kW system, so it's larger. They're producing quite a bit, like the library, which is a 159 kW system. But the smaller, anything under the 20 kW, not the case. You know, they're using it. There's just a few that we have to pay that buyback rate.
thanks. Who's those? What is that?
That would be the bar and grill on Highway 54, the old Bulldogs, right there by the old Panelette, past Quick Trip, heading to the east.
The one that has Family Feud now and then.
Yes. That's on
the sign.
By Coney, Ontario.
Oh, okay. Still don't know where it is.
You know a general area though.
Yeah,
Right next to the County Concrete.
okay.
It's like right there in the corner.
You'll have to check it out sometime.
Yeah, I will.
John, would you like to share any Power Week events?
Yes, tomorrow is our open house event from 3 to 7. We're all looking forward to it. Everything's pretty much set up in the garage already. We're about a day ahead of schedule from other years, so that's great. We got a few more extra features that we're highlighting this year, and please, everyone, join us tomorrow from 3 to 7.
Thank you.
For the cool down.
Yeah. Snowmobile soup.
Anything else? If not, the Director of Engineering and Electric Operations report.
The Mariani project all went smoothly?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive if you go take a drive from Mid-State out to Mariani's. It's a pretty nice looking line, something I think everybody's proud of, and I know I am. And we were able to get rid of their overhead transformer banks, which was right by some of their cranberry bogs, and that's all underground now, so that looks really nice as well. So big improvement.
The expansion out there is a big improvement as well, what they had. That's the end of the line too, right? For us.
That is the end of the line, correct.
As of now.
Well, the reason I ask is there's discussion about transportation and changes that might have to be made to accommodate their truck traffic, which will perhaps impact the roads and us.
Okay.
Is there anything else? If not, the general manager report.
Did I see, is there a glue meeting coming up?
There's the Blues annual meeting is in Rapids in November.
November, okay.
And the 7th or 8th, I'm not sure of the exact date, but I sent it to the commissioners, so if you want to come, let me know.
I think I RSVP'd to somebody, either you or Roxanne, yeah?
And then I'll either be reaching out by email or Roxanne by phone in the next few days or early next week to try to find a date for the budget meeting later this month.
Talk about accounts payable. Mr. Chairman,
What's that?
I think we're going to talk about accounts payable.
If you'd like, go ahead. What do you got?
Just some questions. Wesco electric inventory, $30,000.
What page?
Oh, damn if I know.
Second
Up on
page.
top.
204.
Yeah. Is that white or?
It could be any electrical inventory, though, I'm seeing it, I don't know.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Yeah, it could be anything that we needed to replace in the storeroom. So it could have been switches, it could have been arresters, it could have been anything like that. We'd have to pull that specific one to see. So our storeroom clerk does all the ordering for the storeroom quantities. But if you'd like, we can get you that.
Does it give us some purchase advantage to buy in a large quantity like this?
Yeah, well, Resco and Wesco both have advantages to purchasing quantities, so yeah, exactly. But we have the system set up so that when she gets a low number for a quantity on any of her items, she gets a hit for that, and then she goes ahead and orders her typical amount to bring it back to its max, and then that keeps going like that for everything.
Okay. And I found this MCC for the wells.
Yep, so that was in my report where Tyler actually worked with our 2 meter techs and they replaced the MCC at well number 1. So we now have all new MCC at all 5 of the wells. And then when we meet in a couple weeks to talk about the 2019 budget, we have 2 lineups of MCC up in our filter plant, and one of the line items for next year is to replace the west lineup of MCC, and then the following year we'll replace the east lineup, and that will we'll then have all of our 480 volt equipment will be, less than a few years old, which lasts us quite
So this was a capital item.
It was a capital item, but it was on the water capital budget, not the electric capital budget.
Okay. And install and remove 10 MVA transformer. Was that also part of the capital?
So yeah, so we're still, first getting the bills from, we use both Energis and Krause Power Engineering for when we put in that new transformer at the west sub, and that was back in early July. So their costs are first showing up now in the accounts payable. So that's part of that capital project.
And Aflac insurance, what's that for?
That's all paid for by employees. That's, your cancer insurance and disability insurance and those kind of insurances, but that's all payroll deducted and 100% paid for by employees.
Okay.
That's it, huh? None of the other guys have any questions on accounts payable? No? All right, I guess we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second it. John and Joe made the motion and second. All in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks.